Hopefully you had no problem doing the get by ID of a lesson. Um, if you had problems, here is the code right here. I encourage you to freeze your screen, put the video on pause, and make your code look like this. And it's pretty much just what we did up here, except we're going after a different array. Really, we're just going after the lessons array instead of the channels array. So I encourage you to pause your video, make your code look like this, and test it out in Postman or Insomnia. We're going to move on now to our final CRUD operation in order to complete the cycle. And we have, so far we know how to create data with a post. We know how to read data with a get. We know how to destroy or delete data with a delete. And now we need to learn how to update data or change data that we've already posted up. We need to somehow change it. And we have at our disposal two different verbs. There is a put and a patch. And I will teach you the one that I was taught first, which is the put. And then I will teach you the patch that I find to be probably a lot easier to work with if you're just making incremental changes. So without any further ado, the server.put. Now, whoops, the problem before us here is we need to be able to look up something by the ID in order that we can find it and then make changes to it. So the put and the patch are CRUD operations that are going to incorporate using a URL parameter in order to help us to find the record that we're looking to change. And then it's also going to encompass a rec.body, which is going to contain the changed information on it that we want to use to update. So we have to find a record that we're going to make changes to, and after we found that record, then we have to also upload to the rec object the changes that we want to make. And so the put and the patch are, out of the four CRUD operations, it is the most difficult because you need to be using both a URL parameter on the command line, specified in the URL here like this, as well as you need to create a rec.body object. And so when you are testing this in Postman or Insomnia, you need to create a JSON object that's going to contain the information that you want to make, that you want to change. Okay, that's a lot of words. Let's get coding and I'll explain as I go. So we're going to once again work with the channels, if I can spell it right. And since we need to be able to identify a unique record that we're going to make a change to, we're going to still stick with using the URL parameter in order to help us find that record. We've got to include the homies. And this sends us a callback. So now the familiar part, we deconstruct our ID like normal off of the rec.params object. Oh, I forgot an equal. There we go. Rec.params. And now we need to, so this helps us identify the record we want to update. Now we got to create a variable that's going to hold the changes. And so let's create a new one, const, and we'll call it just changes. And we're going to send that on the rec.body. So now we're really using this rec object in a big way. We're using the two objects within it, the params for parameter, for the URL parameter, and we're using the body object. This is going to help us find the record we're looking to change, and this is going to contain the changes we want to make. And so since finally we are once again using an array to hold our data, we need to help. We need to find the index of the record that we want to change so that we can replace the information at that index with new information. So for instance, let me just go down here. Let's say we have an array, and in the array we have an object called name with the value of Bob. And then we have, as a second array item, another object with a name and with a name of Sue. And let's say we want to change Sue to Suzette. And so we need to be able to find this array position, this index 0, index 1. We need to find index 1 so that we can change this array object so now it'll look like, dang. So it looks like this. And so what we got to do is we have to, since we're using an array to hold our information instead of a true living database, we are going to have to look for the index. If we were using a SQL or a relational, database, then we have methods that we will be provided for that'll help us find the proper record out of the database. I know that doesn't make sense, but it will make sense in the future videos where I teach you how to set up not an array to hold our information like up here, but a true relational database. But for right now, we need to change information, and our information lives in an array. So let's go find the index of the record we want to change. So how we do that? Let's create a variable. It's going to hold that index, and we'll just call it index. And let's say it's and how do we find an index of a value? So we're going to be passing in a value. And how do we find a value? How do we find an index of a value that lives in an array? And so we can go to MDN, and we have this array method, find index. And find index is going to return the index of the first element in the array that satisfies the testing condition. Else it's going to return to us a -1. So if it finds it, it'll return the index of where it lives. Like for instance, in our case, if we wanted to change that second item, the array position 1, from Sue to Suzette, it'll return the value 1. But if it doesn't find it, it's going to return to us a -1. So let's just make use of that array method. So let's say channels dot find index, and for each channel, return to us the index where the channel.id equals the ID. And so that's gonna, if it finds it, it'll return the index into this value right here. And then we will have an array slot that we know we need to make changes in. So now we can say, and so now up here we were using sort of a truthy falsy sort of thing. If you find the object, then store the object here, else it returns a null. But we know our find index doesn't return a null. It returns a -1 or a true index. And so we can't use our simple truthy falsy logic. We have to test if it's not -1. If it's a -1, it can't find it. But if it's a not -1, that means it found it. So we can say if index is not equal to -1, that means it found it. We can say found it. There's a comment. Else it did not find it. And we can do our standard here. Let's just copy our verbiage right here. Control C where it doesn't exist. Else we return a message. It cannot find the channel that we're looking for. But if it does find it, then how do we update an array value at an index? Pretty easy. We just use the array channels. What index are we looking for? The one right here, index. If it finds the value, it's going to give us the index of what we need to change. So we know index holds that index value. And it's going to equal, and our changes are going to live in rec.body. So we're going to pass in a JSON object containing the changes that we want to make. So, changes. Now, something about put. A put is going to do a complete replacement of the rec.body. And so what I mean by that is, let me go down here again. Let's say we have an object, and like our channels one, and what we have like name, we have some value. We have less than ID, and that has some value, like 1. And then we have cohort, and that has some value in it. It's not important, the values. With a put, you have to supply this entire object again. Even if, let's say, we just want to change the name, you have to supply all the values again, all over again. Because what put does, it does a complete overwrite of your object. If it finds that object, and if it finds it, it's going to completely overwrite it with everything. And so when we create our JSON object in Insomnia or Postman for whatever changes we want to make, we have to include the entire object all over again, even with the values that we don't want to change. We have to do that. So I think that'll become a little clearer as we test this in Postman, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's, I think this is good to go. Just make sure. We've deconstructed our ID. We've made provision for capturing the object off the rec.body. We're finding the index of a value if there's a match. If the ID you put in matches, then we go find the index of that array position. And then if that index is not equal to -1, that means it found it. Then we're going to go into the channels array at that index position, and then make that equal to this. And this is going to be the brand new value that's going to be stored at that array index position. Else, if you can't find it, return an error message. Go back. So let's save this. Server's running, so that's good. Let's go to Insomnia. This is what I like to use. And we're going to create a new value over here. I'm going to right click in this blank area and hit new request. I'm going to call it a put. And it's a put over here. And it is going to be a body. So we're going to have to do a JSON body. If you're using Postman, you're going to have to say body, raw, and then type JSON. But in Insomnia, you just kind of specify all right here. So I'm going to hit create. Now we have our new put right here. Let me put the localhost 5000, localhost, let me just copy it. Oh, cool, it's right there. 5000, we're going to have to stick an ID that we want to change as well as a JSON object. So let's go make some posts. Let's enter a couple values in there since our array has been wiped out. Let's enter this one. Let's enter another one. 2. This should be familiar to you now. And let's enter another one, a 1, but let's get rid of that underscore. It's kind of a mistake. And then let's say that's the value that we want to change. We want to make. So let's do a send. And now let's do a basic get. Let's see all the 3 we just entered. And we see our _3, _2, and then we see a 1 here. Oh, that's not right. Somebody entered that wrong. We need to do a put and update this information. We need to change this to an intro _1. So we're going to go to a put, but it's going to be for this particular ID. So let's copy this ID. Let's copy that ID, go to the put. We put that ID up here because it's our URL parameter. This helps us find that particular object we want to change. And now we go to our JSON and we create the new object. Let's go to the get copy. Let's copy it all. So we're going to have to type it all in. Let's go to put, paste it in, and we have to provide all of the, whoops, I got an extra curly brace up there. We have to provide all the information again, even if we don't need to, even if this information right here stays the same. With a put, you have to supply all the information all over again. And so right here, the change we want to make is that. And so we've identified the object up here, and we're giving it the new JSON object shape right here. So let's hit send. There seems to be a mistake. So let's go look and see what's going on, because that was running. Let me see. Name, node intro 1. ID is that. That's the same ID. Let's look at the get. That is the right ID. Okay, let's go look at our code real quick here. Let's say server.put, channel ID, rec.res, rec.params, changes equals rec.body. We got an index, so it's channels.find index, channel equals channel ID equals ID. If index is not equal to -1, channels index equals our changes, else we're going to return a status of 404. Oh, we didn't return a status here again. That's what the problem is. Just easy thing to do, but when you're writing endpoints, when you're writing these CRUD endpoints, you always have to return this object. You don't always have to be passing something in, like gets don't ever use the rec object, but the response object you always have to provide, and I forgot to do it. So let's do res.status of 200 for successful dot JSON, and then what are we going to return? The value that lives at that array position. So channels index. So this is going to return the value that's at that index in that array and convert it to a JSON object. Let's hit save. Fortunately, our array items that we entered have probably been wiped out. Let's do a get real quick. Yep, they're wiped out. So let's go enter a couple. Let's enter this one first, and then let's enter the other ones. Again, 2, 2, and one more, 3, 3. We got 3. Let's do a get. Check them all out. We got them all there. We go, oh, this one isn't right. It should have an _1. Let's go grab the ID. Let's go to our put. Stick that ID up here. And we've already got before us, oh, but the ID's got to be this new value, right? We even have to tell it the ID down here. We have to tell it everything, because put is going to simply say, take the value that lives there now and completely replace it with whatever is in this JSON object. All right, so let's try this now. Excellent. Let's confirm that it changed. Let's go back to and do a get. The last get we did is where this was not done correctly. Let's do a send, and now we have made our update. We have made our change. We used the URL parameter to help us identify the record, and then we also passed in the rec.body a JSON with the entire shape of the object as it existed before, along with whatever change we want to make to any of these values. Put can also add values. I think you can add a new value, I believe. Let's say we wanted, for this particular one object, we wanted to create a messages array. Let's say we wanted to do that. Then let's go ahead and make this change. Let's do a get, and now look at our. So puts can be used to add information, but just to show you as proof, let's say we wanted to make the change of the name and we forgot to include all that information right here. So we're identifying it by its proper ID, and we're saying just change the name. This is a put. Go that. It's going to do it. And then let's go do a get. And look, it wiped out the ID. It wiped out all that other information. And so puts are kind of dangerous. You have to give it the entire object right back again along with any changes you want made. So that's a put. The next one is a patch. Now a patch is, I think, a lot more useful and a lot more efficient, because with a patch you don't have to give it the shape of the entire object back again. With the patch you can literally just specify what changes you want to make. You can also add values too. So let's do a patch. We'll go server.patch. And you know what? Let's copy this right here. Res. And with a patch, I think it's a little bit easier because we still got to identify through the ID. So we're going to deconstruct our ID equals rec.params. And then we're going to say changes again equals rec.body. We're going to still have to create a JSON object. And with this one, we don't got to find the index position. It's a little bit easier. We can just literally find that ID, find that object, kind of how we did up here. Matter of fact, let's just copy this right here. We can go back to just finding the object. We don't have to find the index position. So we're going to find the object and say, if you find the object, if there's a match on the ID and you're able to find it in that array, give me the object right here. And then if found, so it's kind of, we can resort kind of back to our truthy falsy logic. If found, we're going to update it. Else, we're going to return this does not exist. Now, how do we change the values inside of an object? Turns out we have a handy method for objects called object.assign. Object.assign will copy all the properties from a source to target. So basically what we're saying is this is the object that exists, and you want to apply these changes to it. So you notice, like right here, we're going to add a C. Right now the original has an A and a B, and there's a C value here. And then also notice that the B contains a value of 2, but we want to change the B to 4. We want to end up with the final thing where A is 1, B is 4, with the C added to it. And so we can use this object.assign method to help us. So we can just simply say, if that object is found, and now we have that object contained right here in this variable, we can just say object.assign. And what was it? We got to provide the target as the first parameter, and then the changes you want to make as the second. So object.assign, we're going to say found, because we got the object sitting right there, and we want to apply these changes to it. And then we want to this time not make, I want to not make the same mistake, and this time return a status, the .json of found. So So you notice this, I think, little bit cleaner and a little bit more intuitive. Um, you basically can use sort of a lot of the same logic that you use up here with just going and looking for the object by the ID match and then making a copy of that object and then making whatever changes you want. I believe patch is probably an easier, better one. Unless you have a business case or a development case where you absolutely need to completely wipe out the prior object and create a brand new one. If not, I think patch is going to be used most of the time. So let's just tighten this up a little bit. Let's look at it. Let's save it. It looks good. So let's go to our insomnia. Do a get. Nope. Let's go enter those values again. We got a 3. Let's enter a 2. And let's enter a 1 without the underscore. And let's enter without a underscore there. So let's say there's two things. Darn it. Lesson ID is, well, I don't know how to get rid of that. Delete. There we go. I don't know how I got that in there. There we go. So there's 2 values that we need to make a change. We need to stick an underscore here, and we need to stick an underscore there. So let's load that. Let's get those 3. You go, this one looks good, this one looks good, this one looks a little strange here. So let's use let's write a patch, but let's copy that ID. Let's go over here, right click, new request. I'm going to make it a patch. Change this over here to patch. And it does have a body. It's a JSON. We're going to create it. Up here, we're going to say localhost. Hopefully it'll, yep, channels. We're going to paste that ID up in here that we copied. And then we're going to just really literally all we have to do is specify the changes we want. And so what? We wanted to change the name to node. And so let's copy this. Patch. Control V. We wanted to change the name to node underscore 1. And we wanted to change the cohort to web underscore 9. Web, whoops, I copied it. Why don't I just paste it, right? To web underscore 9. And you notice with the patch, I don't gotta give you back the entire prior object with the values that we want to. I'm just giving you the values. I'm just providing the values that I want changed. And so let's test this out. So right now it looks like this, without the underscore there and without the underscore there. Let's run it. Now let's do a get and confirm that that information changes. And there we go. We have our underscore 1 and our underscore 9. We can also add information to it. You know, let's say once again I wanted to create a messages array equals an empty array. And let's just say I hit send. I just told it what I wanted to add to it. Let's do a get. And there I have my whatever changes. So I think a patch is a little bit more intuitive, a little bit more useful, and a little bit easier to conceptualize. And there we have it. We have completed all 4 CRUD operations for a basic Node Express server. So let's do a patch together for the lessons, since patches can be a little difficult. We'll just walk through this one together instead of you doing it as a take-home, because in the next video series we're going to move on to something different, and we're going to use a completely different model instead of this channels and lessons. So let's do this, server.patch. If you want to do is take away homework, the put on the lessons, then I invite you to do that. But let's just practice this using a patch on lessons with an ID, rec, res, and we're going to basically we can copy this right here. The fact is we can copy this up here. Changes rec.body instead of channels. I'm going to change this to hold down this, this, and this. If you're on a Mac, you can hold down your Alt Option button and click on each one, and then you can stick cursors next to and lesson. Okay, so now we got lessons. And now we can say if found. Well, shoot, we can really pretty much copy all of that. But let's talk it through. That might be easier. If found, if we find the lesson that we're looking for, then we're going to say object.assign, and we have to provide it the old object along with the changes that we're going to specify in our JSON. And then we can send a status code 200 along with a JSON of the object itself. This will be the object after the changes, so they'll get back the object with the changes made to it. And then else, if it's not found, then we're going to return back. Here, let's just copy this right here. And we'll just say lesson does not exist and hit save. Now let's go input a couple lessons. Insomnia, let's do post for lessons. With a lesson, we only remember had to provide a name. And so we're just going to say, well, we can just call it that for right now, even though they're the same. Node intro 1. See it automatically, it sends an ID. Then we're going to do a node intro 2. And then a node intro 3. Whoops, 3. And so if we do a get on the lessons, we have our node intro 1, 2, and 3, but the 1, shoot, doesn't have that underscore. So let's go use a patch. Let's copy this ID right here. Go to patch, provide that ID up in the URL parameter, and we're going to say name is equal to node intro underscore 1, and hit send. Channel does not exist. Maybe I didn't copy the Control C. Let's go to our patch. Oh, because I said channels right here. See? Channels. Of course, that doesn't exist. Lessons. And just make sure, paste that back in. Yep. Let's now try it. There we go. Let's do a get on it. And there we go. We have our change made. So I really enjoyed working with you on this. I think hope this dispels some of the if you felt like Node and Express was kind of scary. Hopefully I helped to alleviate some of that and to let you know, hey, this stuff isn't too bad as long as we take it in a very methodical approach and we build it up slowly. These are the 4 CRUD operations, and in the next video, we're going to moving on and ratchet it up in complexity just a little bit, so we do something that is a little bit more useful, as a true backend. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.